everyone, and welcome to Who Cares, where we're going to discuss and debate the Doctor on his adventures through space and time.
And today we observe a bad episode in its natural habitat.
Good girl!
Fascinating.
Hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
I'm Jake.
And like I said, this is Who Cares, and we're back to talk about 2 episodes of Doctor Who, by the way, because we did skip last week. And the reason was, we watched that episode, and I thought I didn't have enough to talk about, so I wanted to move it to this week so we could just talk about the 2 parts all at once, because it's a multi-parter anyway.
If I was to talk about the first episode in one episode of this, it would just be, there was a midget. That's the end of my review.
Okay, the first episode, let's talk about it briefly, because I got a whole lot to say about the lie of the land. The first episode, which was The Pyramid at the End of the World, written by Stephen Moffat, and it was co-written by another guy. I don't care. The episode is benign enough where I do not care. I believe it was the same guy who did the Zygon 2-parter, which you can tell because it's the unit-based. Not even unit, it was just the army in this one. I don't know why it wasn't unit.
He's president of the world. Basically, the monks come that you saw from before. They come down, and they know everything that's going to happen in the world, and they start a doomsday clock because in the faraway lab, something's going to happen. There's going to be bacteria that's going to take over the world, and then they're like, hey, if you let us take control, we'll do it, and we'll save the world. And then the Doctor almost saves the world, but he's blind, so he can't get out of the room, so what's her face? Black Rose says, hey, I'll give you your sight back because I'm stupid. And then he gets out of the room.
Can we be clear that Martha is Black Rose? Bill is just...
You're right. You're totally right.
But
she's... The thing about Bill's character is she's been so strong until now.
I don't think she was too bad last week, and even this week, I don't think... By the way, none of what I'm going to say today about Bill is Pearl Mackey's fault. She and her performance, particularly in a certain scene, which I'll talk about later, was excellent. It's the writing that liked it. The writing is letting the actors down, not the other way around. This is entirely a script problem.
This is her Hayden Christensen moment. It gets everywhere.
The Pyramid at the End of the World thing was... whatever. It was set up. The first episode of the 3-parter was the strongest. The second episode I felt was mostly benign setup. But
and by the way, can I mention that they hired a dwarf actress? Is that what I'm supposed to say? Little person.
I think little person is the preferred nomenclature.
At first I thought she was good, and then she turned out to be a shit actress. She just kind of stood there and looked. I don't know. She just had a face, and that was it. But I was glad that they didn't make it a caricature. She was just a person.
Sure. Oh, by the way, I thought there was a little, and it was a problem in this episode too. It was a little over produced in the sense that every time they were talking about the end of the world, they'd cut to like quick flashes of things. Like it was the point was any action you make could, whether you realize it or not, could result in the end of the world. So the girl was like, set her purse down in the doorway, and when she went out, someone else slammed the door shut and it broke her glasses, which helped contribute to it. So when the events continue to happen, it'll show a quick glimpse of glasses breaking, and then another guy who's a part of it, he got really drunk last night and he's hungover. So when his mistake, because he's hungover, happens, they show like a bottle of alcohol smashing, like just quick cuts of it.
Yeah,
and I was like...
It was a little ham-fisted.
It didn't add to the drama. Yeah. I assume that they're trying to do an Alfred Hitchcock ticking bomb under the table and you know it's their situation, but it just didn't work. And even if it had worked, showing those flashes wouldn't have added to the drama of the situation. It just kept taking me out of it like, ooh, we get it. You're directing a show.
Well, it's because it didn't feel like Doctor Who, because usually the conduit to learn that kind of information is through the Doctor. And instead they just kind of showed, like, you knew what was happening before he did, which sometimes you need, and I guess there's no other way to film this other than that. I don't know. Like, you couldn't just have plopped into the middle of it. But you knew immediately what was going to happen from the beginning of the episode because of the pacing and the way they edited it. So whatever.
But by the way, you know what's funny? I think if we had done this review last week on its own, it would have been more positive. But now that I'm prone about to go into this next one, I'm more negative on the lead-in.
Well, I mean, I didn't hate the first episode.
I liked Extremis. I liked the one where it was the simulation. I thought that was a fun idea.
No, I really liked that. That one was cool. This one began to feel self-indulgent, and then this next episode definitely was.
I could not believe when I looked it up afterward that The Lie of the Land was not written by Stephen Moffat, the one from last night. I couldn't fucking believe it.
Can we even blame him for this one? I can't.
I don't know. Do you want to just talk about it
Moffat-y.
now?
Yeah, because, okay, so basically a pyramid shows up, and they're like, why does a pyramid show up? And it's apparently some DMZ in some random fake country that's in the Middle East. 3 armies are there, Russian, American, and Japanese or Chinese or something. They end up, forming a sort of alliance because Doctor's president of the world. That part doesn't really matter. The interesting parts were the discussions with the monks, and he's like, you're going to ask us to do that. I was intrigued early on. You're going to ask us to take over the world. That's a cool idea.
Right.
Like, we're not gonna we're not doing anything. We're not forcing you to do anything. You'll ask us. We know you will. And they just sit and wait. That's a threat. That's a more interesting threat than most other villains have. But then they just
The thing is, they don't even follow through with that thread, because I agree, that's an interesting concept. You will be in such a desperate place that you will come to us for help, even though we haven't provided you with any actual answers, just we're saying, trust us, we will fix the solution for you.
But it was just to give the doctor's sight.
And it was just to get the doctor's sight, that's the thing. And especially because this episode, The Lie of the Land, which is we'll talk about in a minute, we're still talking about the pyramid at the end of the world. The Lie of the Land is such a clear allegory for fascism. It's so thinly veiled. I mean, and that's a great subject for Doctor Who to tackle, because the Doctor is always such a character that is talking to people who are afraid and trying to convince them, I know you're afraid, but you still have to take the high ground here. You can't let your fear turn you into a monster. Right. And that is what fascism is in a lot of ways. It's people using fear to control people and whatnot. So the fact that at the end it wasn't even actual fear of the destruction of the world, but just Bill wanted the Doctor's eyesight back, because Bill, it's not even like Bill could think to herself, once I fix your eyes, you can fix this. I mean, maybe she thought that.
She said out loud, you better give your planet back.
But that's I think that's a stupid thing for a character to do. I just think that's a real dumb thing for a character to do.
Well, because they've only been, what is this? How many episodes is this? 6, 7?
This is, Pyramid at the End of the World was 7, and Lie of the Land is 8.
Okay, so they haven't been friends for long enough. Like this is a thing that Amy would do, and I would buy it, because she genuinely loves the Doctor. Like right now, Bill isn't there. It's like I didn't feel what they wanted me to feel, because they rushed the moment of trying to be like, no, but I care about this person, and I'll give up the whole planet for that person. That can be effective. That's happened before. But didn't buy it. I just don't buy it.
I also think that's just an overused Moffat trope, and I'm goddamn sick of it. Is the whole
that's what I'm saying. It used to be like novel. Like it used to be like, oh wow, that's pretty heavy. And now it's just like, yeah, it's always the world's at stake, and your bond's very strong.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Moffat's about to be done. But Pearl Mackie acted the shit out of her first big scene in the second episode.
Yeah. So let's fast forward. Let's go to the next episode, the most recent one, The Lie of the Land, which was shockingly, like I said, I cannot believe this wasn't written by Moffat. I can't believe it. It's amazing how much Moffat shit. And I have a whole section in my notes today about the Moffatisms. But this was written by Toby Whithouse, who has written so many good episodes of Doctor Who. I cannot believe he wrote such a terrible episode. He wrote The Husband's a River Song, which was that great Christmas special.
Episode.
He wrote that Under the Lake and Before the Flood, which was that Bootstrap Paradox 2-parter, which I thought was good. It had problems, but I thought the underlying concept was great, and I thought it was executed well. Magician's Apprentice, which was a good opener, I thought. God Complex, I didn't think was that great. Vampires
He's
of
worked
Venice.
a lot on this Doctor. Holy shit.
Yes. And then he did the school reunion one with which was when Sarah Jane met the 10th Doctor again. So that was kind of fun. But he has more hits than misses here. So I am shocked he wrote such what I consider to be a terrible episode. But anyway,
especially because the concept is Doctor Who-y enough to work.
it is.
It's like handing a planet over willingly to benevolent dictators because of like threats that you can't control. Like that's an interesting concept, and there's a whole dialogue you can have between like what it even means to be free, what humanity is our safety worth more than our freedom, and stuff like that, which are conversations that are happening now, but they don't explore any of those things.
Sure.
It just is kind of like the place they're at, and then we have some dialogue about other shit.
So let's start this out and tackle basically the first half of the episode, because this episode's very unbalanced in where the plot happens. So let's go with how it opens, because it actually is a good opener. The opening is, for this concept, basically the opening you should do. I agree with how they did the opening, and it's a propaganda short being narrated by the Doctor about the new status quo of the planet, in which the monks have been there since the beginning. They are the fascist overlords who are beloved by the populace, sort of Big Brother style. 1984 style, I should say.
And this sort of had a, what was that called? The End of Time? Where they reset the universe after the Pandorica and all the pieces of time are at the same spot. What's that called?
I think so. I think that's the End of Time.
Yeah, and then Amy is kind of like they're on a train, and I don't know what it's called, but it doesn't matter what that
I know what
called. You know the
about.
one if you're a Doctor Who fan. It had the same exact tone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and right after we get that scene, which is good, the Doctor is clearly working with them or whatever, which is intriguing. It returns with Bill narrating. Now, there are certain episodes, and I don't know ones off the top of my head, but there are some episodes that are narrated by companions, or other people for that matter. I've never been a fan of that writing style in Doctor Who, because it always comes off as cringy to me. I don't know why, but the idea of the companions narrating in their own head has always sort of been a fourth wall break to me that never turns out well. And while I'm sure there are some shows that can make it work, for some reason, when the Doctor Who companions narrate an episode and you're supposed to think it's the thoughts coming right out of their head, it just takes me out of it. Especially considering they use the kind of cringy plot device of Bill having an imaginary mom friend. And do people sometimes talk to dead relatives? Yeah, but not in this quirky character trait way, you know?
At first, what I thought is that because they're being implanted with false memories by the monks, and because Bill's the conduit, she kind of just like did that and started doing that as a coping thing, and maybe she didn't understand it, and that was okay. Like, she even there was actually physical coffee that she set down.
See, I don't think that's what the episode is going for. I got the feeling that
it's not. But that's what I thought at first, because like I intuited that as a Doctor Who fan. I was like, oh, she's okay, and I gave it a pass until later when it's the Deus Ex Machina. Like, okay, that's happened before, and it's Clara's Leaf all over again.
I would argue it's way worse. It's Clara's Leaf plus
the Rings of Akaton was way better. And it didn't work.
Yeah. I'm going to say it's Rings of Akaton plus Closing Time, where Craig stopped the Cybermen and the cyber conversion via the power of love. Because apparently no one who was in the middle of being turned into a Cyberman before, ever while being forcibly killed, basically, thought about their loved ones. Ever until Craig.
Cybermen?
What?
Was that Cybermen?
Yeah, remember? The Cybermen were converting Craig, and like in the middle of it, he's like, no, I have to save whatever his kid's name was, I don't remember. Stormageddon.
Oh, I was thinking of the first one when they did the very similar thing, like, why are you staying here?
No, the second
time.
And
through the power of love, they decided to stay.
Yeah, they're literally in the middle of cyber converting him, and thinking about saving his son is what killed the Cybermen.
You can't kill him. He had a contract to do a night show.
But the thing is, I like those episodes because they're good episodes.
Craig's good.
Yeah.
Like, all the things leading up.
Anyway.
This one, it fell victim to, like, that's a Moffatism in itself. Like, use the power of love.
Yep.
We don't need... There was better ways to do this.
So, Nardle shows up, and Bill's like, oh, Nardle, you're still here. Nardle's like, yep. And then weird stuff starts happening. For instance, they basically decide they're going to go break out the Doctor because they believe he's being held captive by the monks so he can be their mouthpiece, and they think he's just biding his time until he comes up with a plan to escape, or whatever.
Sure.
And Nardle says, I know where he is. He's being held on one of the old prison ships. This is a plot hole, because old prison ships implies, like, the monks have actually been around for years and have been using, like, old prison ship. You know what I mean? It implies a mythology to this universe that isn't there, because within the story they explain they didn't actually go back in time and change history. It's a memory trick. So, sure, you could implant the memories of prison ships, so you could have old prison ships, but they said the monks have only been here for a couple months, so in a couple months did they build giant prison ships and then make them look old, and then put that into their false
I mean, it's
memory?
not really a plot hole and more of just a quirk of the dialogue, I guess, but, like, if he would have just said
that's
prison
absolutely a
ships
plot
and
hole,
not
because
old,
they made...
That's just your anger.
No, because the ship didn't look like a normal ship. It looked like a ship that was built to be a prison ship. And it looked old. It didn't look like a newly built ship.
Okay, so it's an old prison ship then.
Prison ships don't exist in real life.
Yeah. That's a weird... Okay, I disagree with the reason that's a plot hole.
Prison ships do not exist
silly.
in the Doctor Who universe, so it would have to be a retcon done by the monks. So where did the boat come from?
So they just made it. They made they made the statues too in these pyramids. All like they could make a fucking boat.
I rescind.
Okay, like if they don't have boat technology, they're not a threat.
It's just the fact that it's a boat and it looks like an old boat and it's confusing.
Whatever.
It confuses the overall idea, I think, of the memory versus did they actually go back in time.
Like, set builders are people that exist that can make things look aged. It doesn't strike me as odd. I don't know.
It just seems like an odd thing for them to build into their fantasy. Why did they come?
It's like when we faked the moon landing, Hugo.
Anyway, I have to give a shout out to it. I like continuity nods. When all those people who are brainwashed are in front of the store watching news footage on the televisions, which is a trope which I haven't seen in decades because literally there is no electronic store in the world anymore that keeps TVs on so people can stand in front of them and watch the news. That was a Magpie electronics store, which is...
I was going to say.
Yeah, it's the same one from Idiot's Lantern, and they've referenced it a couple times since then. But, so anyway... God.
This is when it gets bad, by the way.
This is where it gets real bad. Although I do like Capaldi's outfit here. He wore this in
I did too.
Extremis. I like the coat. It's black, but it looks worn and aged.
I actually remember thinking that when he wore that, like before we did this, that like, oh man, that's cool looking. I like that.
Yeah. So let's get to the fucking terrible. Well, here's the thing.
It's not even terrible.
The scene. Like... No. Here's the problem. The scene is fucking excellent. That's the problem. Because what happens is the Doctor is there. They go in and they think they're about to break him out of prison. He immediately stands up the second they walk into the room and he yells for the guards. Guards come in. Bill's confused. Turns out the Doctor is actually working with the monks. And his reasoning is, listen, the fact that you were able, the dumb thing you did in the last episode, which we talked about, her trading the entire Earth so he could see again for a chance for him to maybe later get the planet back. The Doctor thinks that's such a stupid decision, he cannot trust humans anymore. They're too erratic. He thinks it's just too much. They never learn a lesson, no matter how many times he saves them. So he's done. The monks, well, they're not great, and he doesn't like them. At the very least, they're not Daleks or Cybermen. They are benign. They just want control over the populace for whatever reason. So the Doctor is willing to do that. And then, escalating it further, Bill even says, oh, so it's like that time at the Frost Fair. This is her signaling to him, oh, are you tricking these people? This is a thing, right? Which in normal Doctor Who episodes, he would say yes, and that would be the wink to the audience.
It did such a good job of subversion.
But then he says, that was a trick. She was trying to test me to see if it was a trick. This isn't a trick. And it keeps going on. And I kept thinking to myself, there's no way they're really going forward with this, right? Because it was too good. It was such a different play on the Doctor and him actually maybe making a terrible choice. This could have been, Time Lord victorious David Tennant watching a woman shoot herself in the head because of his egomania type moments for the Doctor.
Oh, it was so close.
And it goes and goes until finally Bill would have redeemed her, would have absolutely, and I think it did in as far as a character intelligence way, but it still undercut it because of what ended up happening. She pulls out a gun. She steals a gun from someone and points it at the Doctor. And she says, if you're working with the monks, we will never defeat them, so I have to kill you because I know you and I know you always win. And she shoots him. She doesn't think about shooting him and then someone grabs the gun. She shoots him and he starts to regenerate. By the way, earlier in the season, I mentioned why he never explained regeneration to her. That's probably because this scene wouldn't have made sense if she knew what regeneration is.
Right.
But he starts to regenerate, and I go to myself, I knew this wasn't going to be the real regeneration, but I was like, okay, where are they going with this? What are they going to do with this regeneration energy? Because, David Tennant had that thing where he shot it into his hand so he could stay himself.
I thought he was going to use the energy for something, too, and he was goading Bill.
Right, I thought that was the plan or something. But then they do absolutely the worst thing you could do with this powerful, well-acted scene. Pearl Mackie should be fucking insulted. They had her do what could have been one of the best companion moments in the history of Doctor Who, and then it was all just nah, but not really, fuck you. And I'm not kidding when I say this. This episode's 44 minutes long. The entire 19 minutes and 44 seconds of this episode, the first almost 20 minutes, are all a build-up to this fake-out, in which, after she shoots him, the Doctor's regenerating in a classic, regeneration pose. He just goes, no, we're joking. I was just testing you. Half of the runtime of the episode is a fuck you to the audience for wanting something interesting to happen. Oh, you know what? You wanted something new? You wanted a companion Doctor dynamic you've never seen before? You want the Doctor making different decisions? You want him changing his opinion on humanity? Maybe he'll go back on that. He has to. He's the good guy. But you want to see an interesting conversation? Fuck you! Fuck you, audience, for wanting something interesting. They treat it the audience is dumb for wanting Doctor Who to be interesting.
It's because they didn't have the balls to do the right thing here, which is to let that ride out. Maybe he doesn't regenerate. Maybe it's like, you can't kill me. We switch the blanks out.
Sure.
And then he's like, get out of here. I'm not willing to kill you, but get out. And then what they do is her and Nardole go break Missy out. And you have Missy v. Doctor until it all turns out that the Doctor wanted them to break Missy out so that they could do this while he was maintaining moderate control through his guise of being the propaganda minister, basically. That's how you handle that. You keep the subversion until the last moment. So for 43 minutes, we think the Doctor's fucking evil for a little bit because of how it's going. Or at least he's not good for an episode. And you keep that going. Imagine Missy v. Doctor for the rest of that, after that build-up.
Yep.
And then you get Missy out. And now Michelle Gomez is stealing scenes, which she does twice in this episode.
Especially considering one of the things that's clearly going to be carrying out through the rest of the season is Missy trying to be good. Or Missy trying to show the Doctor she can be good. What better way... And by the way, as an audience, I'm going to talk about this later, I'm not alone in saying no single person in the audience is convinced of this, right? We all are on the same page that this is all a scheme on her part. But
if it turns out to be true, that's a great character arc.
But what I'm saying is, in your plan, in which we find out definitively, this is the episode where we definitively find out Missy is in the vault, and we knew that. Or no, we knew that last week, but this is the first time we see her in that. So let's say that is what happens, and Nardole and Bill have to go break her out. And Nardole is kind of against this, but of course Bill has never met Missy before, and Missy does save the day. Missy is the good guy of the episode. She stops the Doctor and saves him from himself.
It's brilliant.
And now, not only is that a better episode and more interesting, now the audience and
better.
The
That's
Doctor,
almost one of the best.
Right. The audience, the Doctor, and Bill, and Nardole are all now saying, oh, maybe Missy is changing for some reason. Maybe she is the good guy, or she will be. Or even if you're in the audience and you're Obviously, they're not going to keep the Master good. Obviously, they're not going to do that. But you would still say, at the very least, this is an interesting progression of events. I kind of think I know she's going to turn on him, but at least when that happens, it'll have an impact because they were starting to build a relationship.
But what if... See, you could even go that even further, and you could have a redemptive Master story, and this could be the end of this incarnation of the Master, and then you can just go back and get past versions, which is fine because time travel. But, like, John Sim Master ends up becoming a threat or whatever. She pretends to team up, ends up subverting that again. Turns out she actually was the good guy, even though she's doing bad shit. And, like, that would be amazing. Like, I think you could really have, like, oh, the Doctor's last friend in the universe from his home planet is actually, it turns out they were friends and she did care. And, like, I don't know, they had an opportunity to, like, change the game a little bit here, and they didn't have the balls to do it. You know, like, in the writer's room, like, somewhere in the draft, it was, no, he's really bad, though.
It had to be.
Somewhere in someone's thought, it had to be, and he just, like, couldn't figure out how to do it. You break Misty out and have her be the good guy. That's it.
I would...
Everything else takes care of itself.
I guess. And then, what else?
Because she said because the whole thing is, she's beaten the monks before.
Don't wait.
To kill Bill.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a little bit. Before we get to the actual conversation with Missy, I want to talk about the cringe scene after it. By the way, this episode has basically every bad thing of the Moffat era, but dialed up to 11. You know, kind of scenes where the Doctor does something crazy, quirky, because he's the Doctor and he bow ties.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So the Doctor, of course, they have to go back to the vault where Missy is, but the Doctor can't just, go places because he's so quirky. He takes like a cruise liner, or he takes the boat and he crashes it into, or the prison ship. He crashes it into the goddamn shore. Like, why? The entire reason is just because, but quirky? But quirky? Is that why?
I don't know.
Because
if it was Matt Smith, it would make a little more sense.
Right. If it were Matt Smith, I might be like, okay. But even then, I think that's even a little bit much for him, considering the Doctor.
It is, but I could give it like partial pass.
The Doctor isn't one for big collateral damage things, even if it doesn't hurt anyone. You know what I mean? That's more of a Missy move. That should have been, again, maybe there was an original draft where this was Missy and they broke her out. That would make sense if Missy took a boat and, crashed it into a thing for fun. That doesn't make sense for the Doctor to do it. But anyway.
Well, she loves chaos. Like, imagine the way she would take care of stuff like this. She would literally annihilate all the monks. And that could be an interesting thing. Like she wants to be good and the Doctor wants to be good, but she's not idealistic like the Doctor, and she's doing good things in a way that he totally disagrees with.
Yeah.
But she is doing good, so he can't really be like, don't be good.
Yeah.
You have so much interesting content here, and you fucked it.
Yeah, so they do go and talk to Missy. Michelle Gomez, as good as she's ever been performance-wise, I don't blame her for this. The room is actually designed pretty cool. I like the little Hannibal Lecter prison room they got for her. However... I actually thought, again, in the theme of this episode being all the Moffat shit dialed up to 11, despite him not being a writer, I thought the dialogue and banter between Missy and the Doctor was way too over-the-top campy. And I'm someone who, my favorite show is Doctor Who, so I like camp, silly dialogue. I thought this was so over-the-top, it felt like it started to become a parody of Doctor Who dialogue.
Like, you're on fire?
Yeah, and then she turns to Bill and's like, or like, you're en fuego, and then turns to Bill and's like, that means fire in Spanish. Like, you just always got to put a little, you can't just let a line be a line.
I think it's caliente, sir.
Caliente, whatever. It was caliente. That means hot in Spanish. You can't just have a line. You got to have every line have a little mini punchline at the end that lets you know the character's quirky. So that I thought was poorly handled as well. What else? I already said I don't think Missy's good. Oh, the plan that she explains from the monks and how they conquer planets makes no sense. I do like, you mentioned it earlier, Missy has said she's dealt with the monks before. I always love the idea that the Master, as many adventures as the Doctor has without the Master involved, I like to think the Master has their own adventures off traveling the universe, but instead of like,
Well, that's what she said.
I know,
Like, I have adventures.
I like the idea of her maybe saving planets, but only so she can take them over from whoever originally took them over. I could see her doing that. But so their plan is they do that link they did with Bill, and that's a psychic link that is then used to brainwash the entire population. And that link is then carried on genetically from the parent to the offspring.
She's a lesbian.
She's a lesbian.
She's not gonna probably have children,
But
genetically.
even if that weren't the case, let's say that's unusual in the universe. Let's say humans are the only species in the universe with lesbians or gay people or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's obviously untrue, but yes, let's say that.
Yeah, in the Doctor Who universe, I'm almost certain that's not true. I think they've had gay aliens on before, actually. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I know. Technically, Vostra is not an alien.
oh,
she's
sure,
an alien.
sure. But anyway,
Captain Jack.
So what happens is if the link doesn't have offspring, or I guess is killed or dies a virgin or whatever, they just leave the planet, and the quote is they chalk it up to experience. Which makes no sense, because if they did chalk it up to experience, wouldn't they learn, oh, we should probably figure out a new way to do this so we don't fucking conquer a planet and use the resources and then have to leave after, like, if we accidentally pick a lesbian, or if the person we pick gets hit by a bus tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally...
The apologist for Doctor Who might say, like, Missy's lying, but it didn't come across like that. So. And
not only that, but... why are they interested in conquering planets?
It doesn't ever say. Usually it's a resources thing for most places, or like Earth is like habitable and they want to take it over or make it their own and terraform it, or they're just like Cybermen or Daleks and they just want to do it because the Doctor's there. That's all of those are fine reasons. They don't really ever explain it. I don't think it doesn't. They don't have motivation.
That's what I'm saying. There's no motivation, and I wouldn't even say the resources thing counts, because the fact that the Doctor was letting himself bide time for months and months makes me think what he said about them being mostly benign is probably true. I think they probably are a mostly benign species outside of the they demand complete obedience thing. I don't think they kill humans for fun. I think they demand obedience, and anyone who steps outside of that line does get killed, which is wrong in and of itself, but I think that's why the
Doctor... You are a dialogue moment away from saying they're basically just reverse Ood. Boom, done. They need to be in charge to like really thrive as a civilization, or they just go nuts. Just say that. Just say literally any excuse. It's Doctor Who. They need our oxygen, but they don't breathe it, they eat it. Okay. They need our sunlight to reproduce. Okay. They need fucking Pearl Mackey's tears to maintain their skin tone. I don't know. It matters not. Just give me literally anything, and I'll be like, okay, I accept, I know their motivation. Something clever can happen, or it doesn't have to, but at least I know there's a reason that they're there. It never says. It just says they run simulations on Earth all the time, which implies that there's long stretches of time where they do not inhabit planets. I don't know.
Anyway, next what happens is the scene where they go into the pyramid. And this is it's a Moffat episode, despite it not being a Moffat episode. Did I mention, by the way, that the monks are just Bizarro Silence? Because they're the Silence, just Bizarro. I'm not the only one who noticed that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really work quite the same way, but yeah.
No, that's why I say
close.
Bizarro. Let me explain. Instead of deleting themselves from your memory and actually being in all of human history, they insert themselves in all of human history and brainwash you to adore them and think about them constantly. Not only that, but you need to, in a similar way with the Silence, you had to wear that eye patch to remind yourself they exist. You had to wear the headphones to remind yourself that the monks are evil. Not only that, there's literally a scene. You know how the Silence used to outstretch their hand and electrocute people?
He opens the door.
The monks.
Oh yeah, they
do
that too.
Do the same thing. This felt like
they have shields though, very different.
They're the Silence. They're almost exactly the same, at least in function. If not,
he also had long fingers, and he opens a door all like creepy.
Yeah, it was very Silence.
I did like really a lot the throwaway line. I think it was in the last episode for the reason that they look the way they do for the character design, and they're like, we chose this form so that we would looked recognizable to you, and then someone goes, "You look like corpses," and he goes, "To us, you are corpses." I thought that was cool, actually.
Sure.
I really enjoyed that. That's a real cool sort of like, we're very omniscient and in charge, and then it just like, they didn't really ever do anything, so it never felt, I don't know, the threat was so like
nebulous.
Yeah, it never was really nailed down, and I mean, some people might argue like, well, the people that didn't give consent correctly died. Well, yeah, but I mean, after that, it's just literally stormtroopers and bad TV. I don't.
Not only that, but I guess they all seem pretty happy. I'm not saying it's right. I get the episode it's about free will. It's about the importance of free will. But like, they're probably the least evil species in Doctor Who Invader category because all they want to do is go in there and rule. But they don't seem to be doing anything evil to anyone who agrees with them. I don't know.
Well, yeah, the idea is they're, you've given your free will, but it's still like benevolent dictatorship as long as you. It had a lot of religious allegories as well.
Yeah. Anyway, moving forward, they get to the main chamber in which the psychic brainwashing is being projected, and in this place, it's fine. They don't need their headphones because it's the eye of the storm, which is fine. That's a perfectly fine explanation. Again, you can explain anything as long as you take a line and you explain that shit. The Doctor goes up and tries to use his psychic powers, because the Doctor does occasionally have, Gallifreyans in general, or at the very least Time Lords, have low-level psychic abilities. Goes and tries to insert the correct history back in, but he gets blown back by the power of the psychic abilities of the monk in the chair in the middle of the room. He wakes up tied up, and Bill is there. Now, I don't know if this happened to you, Jake, but at this moment, I literally paused it, and I turned, again, I watched these with my girlfriend, and I had already told her after the fake-out earlier, I was like, that was terrible. That was awful. Mm-hmm. What a fuck you to the audience. I paused it, and I went to her, and I turned, and I said, oh, I bet that moment earlier, it wasn't throwaway. It was to tell us how this is about to go down, because now Bill is going to think that the Doctor is brainwashed because the thing got back into his head when he got blown back. You know what I mean? Like, sure. I thought that was what was going to happen, was because the Doctor tried to interfere with the brainwashing and there was feedback and he got blown back, he was going to be brainwashed now for real, and Bill was going to have to threaten him and there would be a tense moment. It still would have been a pretty bad episode, but at least that would have sort of explained why that first 20 minutes was there. It would have been a setup to explain to you, listen, when Bill is put in a situation where she believes the Doctor is on the wrong side and is with the bad guys, she will kill him. I thought that was the point, was to explain that motivation and explain that's Bill's, what she would do. But nope, it turns out she's just going to sacrifice herself and needs to tie the Doctor up so he won't stop her.
I would have been also fine if she shot herself.
Fine, whatever.
It's a kid's show, but they weren't gonna do that. But
so, as is the case in terrible, terrible Moffat era episodes, of course, we're all saved by the power of love and bad visual effects.
Yeah, it was actually pretty bad. I really no. Like there's some really good moments of the power of love sort of stuff. Whether or not it's saving anything, like the one that always comes to mind is when Matt Smith's dying and he hallucinates Amy Pond, both in kid form and adult form. That's powerful. There's moments in that Christmas special where Clara should have died and didn't, where she's like with Danny and it's not real and she knows it's not real, but she just she lets it eat her anyways. Like she just lives in the moment. Like that's great stuff. This is not that. This is forced. It had no heart, and they wanted to have heart. Like, just drawing a heart doesn't mean that the stuff inside of it means anything, because it didn't.
Sometimes Doctor Who era misses the point. It's okay to have a story where love is the way you find the solution, but love itself, 9 times out of 10, should not be the solution. The solution cannot be love. Oh, I love them. I care about them. I have
feelings,
so it wins. Everyone has feelings. That's what?
Yeah. The allegory they're going for,
I get it.
Seems to be if fascism is your thing, and it's oppressing you, love and compassion and stuff like that will free you and from that, because that's the opposite of fascism is basically compassion. But they didn't it not one person loving their mom. That's not what we're talking about when you're having that discussion. It's now it feels forced and ham-fisted, and you could do it in another allegorical way. And right now I'm too despondent to fucking think of it, but it's just it was so clearly lazy. And now I don't hate this episode nearly as much as Hugo clearly does because he's like yelly. I'm just more like disappointed and like a little sad that like they had the framework was there for like one of those Doctor Who episodes. Like people talk about the Rings of Akhenaten speech. People talk about I don't want to go with the Tennant. People think everybody lived with Eccleston. This could have been the moment you had a really, really fucking solid build up. That first 20 minutes is just really, really good. The episode before this wasn't great, but it's a 3-parter, so like we accept it. And you had Missy and you had Bill like really taking a stand, and none of it got paid off correctly. It's basically like nothing happened. And the next episode kind of proves that because they just kind of fuck off and go to Mars.
Yeah, it seems like a waste of. I'll still watch probably Extremis in my rewatches because I still think that idea, the reveal of the being in a virtual world is interesting. That's a good episode in and of itself. But these 2 parts, no, I'll be skipping them. I'm good. and at the end, it's kind of sad too because then Bill says to the Doctor, well, this is a turning point for humanity. We beat this giant fascist regime. We're going to be better now. And then the Doctor says, like, hey, ma'am, what's this thing we're sitting on? And it's one of the destroyed statues of the monks. And the woman says, I don't know, we thought they were filming a movie or something. And the Doctor explains because of the memory tricks the monks were using, everyone was going to forget. And this, of course, ties into the allegory about fascism. No matter how many times humans get into this situation where we're maybe scared of something, or a politician comes up and says, I have the solution, we just have to shut up those people. I know who to blame, those people. Just give me control. No matter how many times we learn our lesson about fascism and whatever, we always go back to it because we forget the things we've learned. And that's a good way to do that in a story, is have it literally their memories are wiped. I think that's a good way to do it. I think what makes me mad is this was a good time for this episode to come out.
It really was.
About the Doctor and humans and fascism and what is the right thing to do in the face of imminent destruction. In a dangerous situation, how much freedom is okay and not okay to give up for security. It's just... It was such a missed opportunity. And a bad episode's a bad episode.
Yeah.
But a missed opportunity is a good episode we didn't get but could have. And that's so much worse. So, I don't know. The worst thing is...
I like the Missy...
The worst thing is I can't even really think to myself, well, next week's a fresh new episode. Everything will be great because it's written by Mark Gatiss. And the last time he was allowed near a pen, he wrote us Booger Monsters. So...
Also, this one's a rehash of a monster we've already seen.
It's let's next time this. Okay, next time.
Well, I was going to talk about Missy, but we can next time it first, and then we'll talk about that.
That ties into what's happening in the future in the finale anyway, which I'll talk about. But so the next episode, I forget what it's called. I can't imagine it makes a difference. The premise is they find something on Mars that's been there since the 1800s. It looks like a man-made construct, and Bill and the Doctor and Nardole go. And it turns out that an ice warrior led a group of Victorian explorers because Doctor Who loves Victorian-era people. And they went on a Victorian expedition to Mars. That's an interesting premise for an episode. But of course, the ice warrior is just trying to get back to the planet so he can awaken his hive of ice warriors and their queen, so they can, probably take over Earth or whatever. So, that
was Tennant, right? Was that Tennant?
Smith dealt with one on the that submarine. Yeah, and they're also from the classic series, of course. But I don't know. My expectations are for that because it's Gaddis and it sounds like such a generic episode idea. It sounds like they picked Doctor Who tropes out of a hat. Victorian, Ice Warrior, Mars. I mean, Ice Warriors are from Mars, I get it, but you know what I mean. Anachronisms, Victorian spaceships. So I think it'll be a meh episode at best, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. I don't know.
Well, the end of this episode is a short conversation between Missy and the doctor, and he's kind of hanging out with her, which seems to be what he's been doing, because she earlier had said, like, no one's visited me in 6 months, implying she gets regularly visited inside the cell, which is fine, because she's trapped inside the cell. So, so he goes and talks to her, although she's out of the cell in this scene, by the way, that force field with her piano and shit. And he's just sitting there, like, I don't know if he's reading a newspaper or a book or something, I can't remember. And she's just kind of sitting there, like, reflecting, like, I remember everyone I've killed. I didn't think I'd remember their names, too. And, like, I don't know, it was a good moment. And she starts crying a little bit. And he goes, this is a good thing. And she kind of, like, laments that she wasn't warned about, like, this period of reflection and how this worked. Because she's been there for, decades at this point. I thought that was interesting. And it both felt real and fake. So I don't know where they're going to go with it.
My prediction, what I think would be interesting is, we know John Simm's coming back, so I think what would be interesting, and the rumors are what's happening in the finale is, by the finale, Missy is considered by the Doctor safe enough to become a companion. So what happens is, the Doctor, Bill, Missy, and Nardole are the TARDIS crew, and if Sim has to show up at some point, I think what's going to happen is, I think Missy's going to be fighting herself. I think Missy is going to... I think this is the more interesting story, is Missy is kind of good, at least temporarily. I don't want the Master to go away as a villain, but right now, have a good version of the Master, or at the very least, a better version of the Master, who's chaotic. Let's say chaotic good is what Missy will be in the finale. She'll be trying...
That makes sense,
yes,
because she would do anything
and she'll be
to
fighting
good.
the Master, Sim's Master, who seems chaotic evil, which would be an interesting pairing. So... I think that could be fun. Of course, I think the last minute Missy will decide to be evil herself or something, but I think it'd be great if what happens, and we've talked about this before, if the person who causes John Sim to regenerate into Missy is Missy, if Missy kills him or something.
She'll die, though. I think this will close the loop.
Maybe. We'll see. This is supposedly Michelle Gomez's last season as well as Peter Capaldi's. The rumor is they kind of both decided, we're kind of this worked. We're kind of I don't know how to put into words what I'm saying.
Symbiotic almost.
Sure, our relationship and our back and forth is what made that work. So we're both gonna kind of ride off into the sunset and allow.
But
other people.
I want another Master soon after, maybe season 2 or 3 of the next Doctor.
Yeah, I was just gonna say give him a season to reestablish or 2.
But then give me a 3 Master episode. Give me 3 Masters.
Okay, sure.
With 3 Doctors. 3 Masters and 3 Doctors.
You know what? Let's say...
Imagine that fucking episode. And no companions. And even if they're just, like, in a room doing nothing but talking. And, like, debating the fate of a planet.
Sure.
Or something. Like...
Well, apparently, the rumor is because BBC just signed a 5-year contract in Asia for distribution rights of the next 5 seasons of Doctor Who. Now, this isn't... definitive we're making 5 seasons. It's just a first look deal, which just means we're going to offer you the distribution rights to this in Asian territories before anyone else if we do them.
Sure.
But it does mean that the BBC isn't looking at themselves and saying, how are we going to wrap up Doctor Who? We need to get this off our
I don't
plates.
think
they're saying
okay,
we have a 5-year, maybe we're at least looking 5 years ahead. So that's good, especially considering it's, by the way, we've been calling him Chinbull. It's Chibnall. That's the next showrunner. Chibnall. That's how you say it.
I'm sticking with Chinbull.
Okay, I'm sure everyone will be super thrilled with that. But I'm glad he'll get to come on and hopefully have room to knowing, you have a couple years left to do this at least. Don't feel rushed. You get to have your own story arcs, create your own characters, have fun with it, But as much as we shit on Moffat, a lot of the times I'll say, as much as we shit on Moffat, he has done a lot for Doctor Who. Here's where I will say, as much as where he's done a lot for Doctor Who, his era is plagued with shit like this episode, and I am not unhappy that he's done after this season.
I do not remember Davies having so many stinkers.
I think here's the difference. I think Davies was more consistent throughout the seasons, but Moffat, when he has a good episode, it's fucking excellent. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? I think that's
I think
the
he
difference.
really nailed it with Matt Smith too. Some people don't like him because he's crazy, but like it makes sense within the how regenerations work and the inner thoughts of the Doctor at the time. I don't know. I think there's some good stuff, and Amy was really fantastic, and it wasn't like this Rose thing or this Martha thing, or it was. I don't know. You kind of caught lightning in a bottle, but they tried to redo it. He did the thing where he's like, "Oh, pretty girl, Doctor, let's get Clara," and then he let it ride too long, and then I think not killing Clara was when it started to get consistently because before we had like some stinkers here and there, but really after that we've had what 5, 6.
Yeah.
It's been a lot more recently, and that sucks.
I don't know. But it's almost over, and then we get a fresh start. And that's not to say, hey, listen, at the end of the day, most of the episodes of the season are still good. I'm hoping, my hope is that we just stepped on the landmine of the season. Because think about it, we also spent 2 episodes building up to this one, and it fell completely flat. So that's it's not just a bad episode, it's a bad episode that 2 other episodes' existence...
Well, Hellbent was like that, too.
A little bit, you're right. But even that was only... Oh, no, you're right. It was kind of the first part
Heaven
led into
Sent
it.
was really good, but
Yeah.
I think everyone agrees with that. Yeah.
I don't know. I still hope the rest of the season will be good. I still hope Capaldi's actual regeneration, despite being undercut by the bullshit fuck you in this episode, will actually be good.
Have we had a shit Doctor death ever? I don't think so.
Let me think.
I mean, not ever. I mean, in the modern era. I think they've all been pretty good, all 3 of them. So
I'm trying to think.
shit, even the War Doctor had a good regeneration.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like, there's no precedent for it to be bad. So at least we get one more really good episode, and usually the Christmas specials are pretty good, even though I didn't really care for the superhero one that much.
Nah, but just goddamn, guys, you were so close to having such a great episode, but you just went the opposite direction on everything you should have done right. You did the opposite. It's terrible. So anyway,
All right,
everyone, come back next week. We're gonna hope it's better. Until next time, I'm Hugo.
I'm Jake. We'll be seeing Wonder Woman soon too, if you're into that.
Yeah, and we're gonna be doing E3 live coverage of the certain conferences. You'll see it on your
Indeedly
feeds.
do.
Bye.